Welcome, you ARES operators. I got a new AEG. Waited about a very good 4 months for it. It's the EMG Hellbreaker, the 15-inch barrel length. As you guys know, it probably really looks like an ARES Amoba Pro X Octa Arms Keymod 15-incher. Now the biggest difference, as you can see, it uses a Sharp's lower receiver. It's actually, the Sharp's lower receiver does exist in the real steel world, and it actually costs as much as almost this AEG that you're looking at. Now, let's do a quick overview. What do you get on the box contents? You get a cheap box that's made out of thin cardboard, but at least it's every penny of it saved goes to your AEG. Get a plastic cleaning rod, a plastic wrapper to protect your AEG, a authentic Sharps certificate, and you get one 300 round high cap magazine. Now, as you can see, if you live in the States, you get the orange federal flash hider, and if you live in California, you get a couple extra items, those nice blue tapes that obviously cover your AEG. Now, every state has its own rules, so before you take those things off, make sure you check with your locality. Now, for the quick overview, externally, it's probably one of ARES' very nicely created AEG that I've seen so far. It's not made out of quality aluminum, but it's made out of probably quality pot metal, and obviously the finish is not anodized type stuff, but it's a really nice coating on it. And as the other components you get, as you can see, you get ARES competition type trigger, a rear quick disconnect, a collapsible stock. You could see the polymer fixed sights. You get a nice hand grip HG005, and obviously, like any ARES rifle you buy today, you get the ARES EFCS. The inner barrel appears to be a brass 400 millimeter inner barrel. I believe it might be a 603. I tested it. It clocks in about 393 FPS on a Crytek 25 gram BB. Probably roughly translate to 440 FPS. But I believe the spring this one's using is probably closer to an M120. The accuracy, surprisingly, the accuracy is actually very good on this item. At 50 feet with the 25 gram BBs, I was able to get roughly 3/4 of an inch. Now, I put a little star on it because the range on this thing was a little bit horrid. So I'll say that in my cons on why. And the cool part about the Sharp's lower receiver, not only get a nice little shark-looking P40 type pictorial on it, you get actually a serial number on it too. And as you can see on this particular one, I got the lucky number 7. Now, far from the external part about it, what I really love about this rifle, and it has a lot of cons that actually comes with it. And it's kind of one of those cons that actually bring down this rifle a little bit from making it a potentially great rifle to a mediocre one, and I'll explain why. Now, the first, my con list is the ARES upper is probably very proprietary, and you probably only could use the Octa Arms Keymod. As you can see on this picture, you could see that you don't see a really true barrel nut for the Keymod, so you're pretty much stuck with the Octa Arms type Keymods for this thing. The polymer sights, if you're really picky, you can see that they're not straightly lined up. Now, not a big deal. That's up to you guys if you're really into external perfection. Another thing I didn't like about the polymer sights is if you adjust it way out of range, they get a little bit wonky and a little bit loose. And there's really no hard cap that stops you from over adjusting, so just be aware of that. Like I said earlier, even though this thing had pretty nice accuracy, the range obviously sucked because unfortunately ARES always used their stock 70 degree bucking, which is a green type, which I really hate. You could get some pretty good accuracy, but the range on those are really terrible. I was lucky to even get this thing to shoot 125 feet. So kind of a big downer on that one. But like I said in earlier episodes, you can always change that. Another thing I didn't like about the particular upper is that it's a very very tight fit between the lower and upper receiver, and it's so tight that if you have the plastic M4 hop-up unit, it actually makes the hop-up really hard to adjust. Not a big deal, but it can get really, really annoying. The motor obviously uses the standard flat type motor. I never liked it. I think the flat type motor may not be a very good match with this rifle because it's really running on an M120 spring, and that type of motor is more suitable for M110 or M100 spring. The flash hider is actually very interesting on this particular AEG. That I actually got an ARES M4 flash hider from their standard M4s and tried to fit it with this particular Hellbreaker, and surprisingly it's actually very small. Actually, I'm saying the AEG is flash hider has really, I don't know how you say it. It's not, even though ARES is proprietary, I'm really surprised that I cannot grab an ARES M4 flash hider and fit it onto a Hellbreaker, because the M4 regular ARES M4 flash hider is actually slightly too big for this AEG. So what I had to do to rectify it is I had to get Teflon tape, wrap it around the threadings, and actually fit really nice and snug. So that's how I was able to get around it. Now, the very last con that really annoys me about this rifle is if you have those really nice fancy particularly polymer mags, usually the mid caps especially, usually you could tell that there's the polymer type mags obviously have a front lobe up in front that actually sticks out a little bit, and this actually stops you from loading a magazine on the sharps lower. So you're really pretty much limited to certain mags without that little hump like the stock mag, and it'll fit and feed. Now, to conclude on this whole series with this particular AEG, externally it looks great, but there's a lot of little pitfalls on this rifle that actually kind of makes it a little bit mediocre. But the good part is, in these upcoming episodes, and while I was doing this video, I was able to put in the upgrade parts that I really liked. I'll have another separate episode on it, and it really transforms this AEG from mediocre to a fantastic rifle. However, it's the gears. For some reason, I think the sector gear gave down on it, so it'll be probably another couple of weeks before I get to that video. But overall, if you're into the external type AEG, I mean, you love the externals on the Hellbreaker, I think it's worth it, but you gotta be ready to sink in another probably $100 in upgrades to really match the looks of the rifle to its performance. And like I said, I have a little tidbit on how the upgrades did. It did really well, but like I said, I got to repair it and show it to you on a different episode. So there is your first look at the ARES 15-inch EMG Hellbreaker in the 15-inch Keymod.